Welcome to the latest episode of the Special Fathers Network Dad's Zoom call. Tonight's topic is on Dad Meetup Groups, one of the most popular topics voted by our dads. And I'm thrilled that we have such a great roster of dads who have willing to share their thoughts about organizing Dad Meetup Groups, being involved in Dad Meetup Groups, and the do's and don'ts of Dad Meetup Groups. So what I'd like to do is ask each of the fellows that's agreed to make a brief presentation to make a self-introduction, who they are, where they live, what their connection to special needs is, what their connection to the Special Fathers Network is for that matter. And then I have a series of questions that I've prepared that I'd like each of them to answer. And we'll just go round robin around the questions. And if time allows, we'll allow some of the other attendees to ask questions of their own. So I'm going to suggest that we go in order of the dads and the podcasts. So the first 3 or 4 dads have done podcasts, and we'll allow them to go in order of their podcast. So Tom Delaney, you were podcast dad number 44. This stage is yours.
Okay, I've unmuted myself. I'm Tom Delaney. I live in Downers Grove, Illinois. I have 2 boys, one 15, Charlie, and one 13, Jack. Jack is a child with Down syndrome, so he's my child with special needs. Live here with my wife near downtown Downers Grove. And in terms of my involvement with a Dad's Meetup Group, I was involved in starting up a Dads Appreciating Down Syndrome group, about 10 years ago. And we designed it to try to reach dads all across Chicagoland. And we can get into the details of it later, probably, David, but really, I had a hand in developing that group. Right now on our distribution list, we got about 140 guys, and we can talk a bit more about it. But that's me, and that's how I got involved in it. I basically got the idea coming out of a NADS, a National Association for Down Syndrome group, or a conference, I should say, that I went to about 10 years ago. And yeah, we just got it started that way.
Tom, welcome aboard. Thanks for joining us. John Felageller, podcast dad number 65. You're on deck.
Good evening, gentlemen. Yes, proud podcast dad number 65 here, John Felageller, father of one son, Christopher, who's 13 with autism and nonverbal, divorced, live in the north suburbs of Chicago, and do a variety of advocacy with several organizations locally and nationally. I'm the jack of all trades and master of none when it comes to that, but enjoy working with all of them, especially the Special Fathers Network.
John, welcome aboard and thanks for being involved. Up next is Don Raineri, our most recent podcast dad, number 138. Don, the Zoom stage is yours.
I was double muted there. Sorry about that. My name is Don Raineri. Like Tom, I also live in Downers Grove. I am the father of 4. My oldest is 29, and she's married. I'm a soon-to-be grandfather. She's expecting twins. So that's exciting news. I am the father of a 27-year-old daughter as well. And my son, David, is 22. David has Down syndrome, so that's my connection to the Special Fathers Network. And David was a twin at birth, and unfortunately our son Nicholas died at birth due to an accident with his umbilical cord. And I am involved with Dad's startup, a dad get-together group. I am the president of a not-for-profit organization called Dads of Steel. And it's an organization that's designed to help dads become the best version of themselves that they can be for their families. It's kind of equipping them to be more fully present in the life of their kids. So happy to talk more about that.
Don, thanks. Glad you could join us. Matt LaTourette, you're up next.
Hey guys, can you hear me? All right, good. I was having some technical issues before. Good to see everybody again. And I am Matt LaTourette. I live in the suburbs of Chicago. I live in Naperville, which is just a little further west than Downers Grove. And I started a dad's group about 10 years ago now. And we have a Facebook page. we started an in-person group first where we would meet once a month at a local pub. And we started off with, 10, 15 guys in the group. And the local group in Naperville, Aurora, kind of proper, our area, we probably have about 120 dads. When we do have in-person meetings, we haven't had in-person meetings this past year because of COVID. We started out doing some Zoom things, but everyone's doing Zoom, so everyone's kind of zoomed out. So, but those were kind of nice, and I think everybody enjoyed those. But we meet once a month. We have speakers come. We have anywhere from 6 to 25 attendees. We have different, basically topics, kind of like what David's doing, with these things. We have different topics that people are interested in, and we have speakers come in, and it's been good. It's not a formal 503c or anything like that. It's been kind of a grassroots, and I think part of that is kind of nice in a way. There's some advantages to that, but there's also some advantages, I think, with having it as a 503c. But anyways, now we have a Facebook group too, and which is pretty active. I used to keep a list on email. I know not everybody's on Facebook, but there's just not an ideal format to get everybody involved. We have about 300 guys on the Facebook page now, and we have guys from all over the world on the Facebook page.
Matt, thanks for joining us. And I'm going to go to Louis Mendoza out in Seattle. You're on deck.
Hey guys, out here in Seattle area, I live in a little town called Woodinville, which is just northeast of Seattle. I manage the Washington State Fathers Network. I've been doing that for about 5 years. The Fathers Network has been around since 1978. It began at the University of Washington and is now part of a nonprofit called Kindering. So we have men in our network, since we've been around so long, that we have men who have new infants, as well as men who have children approaching 50 years old. So a pretty broad spectrum of dads, which makes it really nice in terms of the opportunities to mentor. Personally, I have 2 daughters, neither of which have special needs. One is 33 and one is 30. And I've been married to my wife for 43 years.
Louis, welcome. Glad you could join us. And I'd like to go to Frederick Jefferson next.
Hi guys, Frederick. Outside of Houston, Pearland, Texas. I have a daughter that's 22 years old. She has autism, moderate, severe. I have 2 other kids, 30 and 32. I started a group for fathers with special need kids. We started with autism, but we opened it up for all fathers with special needs. And pretty much what we do is kind of what all you guys do, is help the fathers break through this wall. And we call it the wall of denial, guilt, isolation, and acceptance. And we teach them how to embrace special needs and how to stay in the child's life, whether you're with the mother or not. So even if you leave, you still have an obligation to be there and how to be there. And if your father figure, whether your grandfather, fiance, boyfriend, we have a spectrum of them. And it's been something we started as a support group. We call ourselves Man to Man. And from that, we piggybacked off to a 501c3 to where we're opening up something. COVID kind of messed us up a little, but we open up something like a vocationary trade center for when they transition out of school, for the ones that can't quite continue in education or enter a normal work environment. And we can talk about that later, but that's just a little brief of what we do here in Texas.
Thank you, Frederick. Glad you could join us. Okay, so for the first round of questions, I'd like each of you to state again what the name of your group is, if it has a name, the scope or scale of the program that you oversee. That would be the number of dads, how often you meet, et cetera. And describe what it is that you were doing pre-COVID, because that's most of the experience for you guys. And then how you've had to adapt or change during the past year. So we're just going to go back in the same order. So Tom Delaney, back to you.
Yeah, so the name of the group is Dads Appreciating Down Syndrome for the Chicagoland Dads, basically is what we go by. About 140 guys in the group. Kind of started off with a lot of different aspirations, just in terms of whether we wanted to fundraise for ourselves to do things with funds that we could raise and donate to worthy causes, whether we wanted to support other organizations that already exist in Chicagoland, whether it's NADS, whether it's Ups for Downs. We had some ideas about being politically active as well, and we have had state and federal congressmen come and meet with our group. We've had candidates for sheriff's office come and meet with our group, and we couldn't really find our footing, I don't think, that way in terms of what we wanted to be. And just, I guess, gravity kind of took care of things. What we really just ended up being more of a social group. And it's you know, kind of like what Frederick was saying earlier, it's just a place for guys to get together and get out of the house and break down some walls and some barriers and talk to each other over a couple of beers. So we're very much a social group. And so with COVID going on, it's kind of been on ice, actually. We haven't really been able to get together. Kind of what Matt was saying, we're a little zoomed out, and it's put a dent in the group. But I think, you know, as soon as we can get back together, it'll take about one email, and I think the troops will rally and we'll get back up, you know, get together and support each other and, you know, tell some lies and have some good times away from the house.
Okay, thanks, Tom. I love that. Tell some lies and get out of the house. And I just want to emphasize that each group has a little bit different character, and your group is pretty much exclusively dads who have children with Down syndrome, which is not unique, but you know, yeah, each of the groups has a little bit different makeup.
Right.
Okay, John Feligler, back to you.
Okay, well, I would say I'm describing my group for the second time, but I didn't do it the first time, so I'll do it for the first time as well. So I run a group called, it's essentially North Suburban Special Needs Dads Meetup. And we're based, again, I'm on the North Shore of Chicago in the North Suburbs. We started off actually as an offshoot of Matt LaTourette's group. Myself and another guy, Craig Davishoff, met in the Facebook group that Matt runs a few years ago. And Craig just kind of put out there, hey, who would be interested in running a version of this that's, you know, not an hour away from where we live? And I said, sure. So we started in about 2017, and we started meeting at a sports bar in downtown Northbrook that offered a free space to just folks in the community. So we were meeting there once a month, and we've met once a month ever since then. I would tell you that we've had a pretty small but dedicated group. And I would say that fluctuates anywhere from 5 to 10 guys, give or take. I think the one thing that we learned early on, especially, and Matt touched on it, is, you know, that we developed the intention to have guest speakers, because what we found is that if you're just inviting guys out to just hang around and talk about their lives and their feelings, you might not get too many unless they really know and trust each other. But if you have a guest speaker and you put that in front of them, at least they have something to kind of focus on, pay attention to, and something to help kind of elicit the conversation. So we did start doing that as well, and getting out, you know, folks from the community that spoke on a variety of topics. And we were doing that again until COVID shut us down, and then we switched to Zoom like everybody else. I would tell you the Zoom attendance has been pretty slim. You know, we get maybe 5 guys at a time. There have been a couple of meetings where it's actually been myself and Tony Brescia, who's not on this call tonight, but a lot of you guys know Tony, and Tony's the warrior of the group. He's always there. So we've had a couple of meetings where it's just been me and him, and hey, you know, as long as one of the guys on the call with me, you know, at least I'm having some sharing and some brother time. So, but yeah, COVID's put a dent in the plans, and we're hoping to get back live hopefully this year if all goes well.
Thanks for sharing. Don, back to you.
again, Don Raineri. I'm president of a not-for-profit group called Dads of Steel. We've been a not-for-profit for just slightly over a year now. And as I had mentioned before, our mission is to bring dads together to motivate, encourage, and inspire each other, to help them to be more fully present in their kids' lives. So before COVID, even as a new 501c3, we've done a couple 3-on-3 basketball tournaments for dads. We've done a family karaoke, Christmas karaoke event that was a nice, successful fundraiser, and some of the proceeds of that we donated to help a dad who had recently lost a child, and because of the time he had taken off to care for his child, he had lost his job as well. So we were able to help that family out with rent, gas, Christmas presents, those types of things. We've, and then COVID kind of hit, and so we've really had to change what we've been doing. We have about 600 followers on Facebook, Instagram. And with one of the outreaches that we have that's continued to grow and be successful is we have a group of dads that meet every Sunday morning, dads who have lost a child. And part of that is just to create a community where dads know that they're not alone, in how they deal with their grief. We found that there were a lot of resources out there for moms who have lost a child, but nothing out there for dads. So it's a community where men can come together. They can be vulnerable, share their feelings, share their thoughts, their experiences. We talk a lot about, the first, like how to deal with your first holidays, your first anniversary of your loss, how to deal with situations when you and your wife might not be on the same page, those types of things. So it's just a very open conversation. The group is growing. We have a dad from the Netherlands who calls in on a regular basis. We have dads from Florida, from Tennessee, and from other states. So that's been one of the consistent parts of our community. But for our, general Dads of Steel, we also had a workshop on communication, how to communicate with your kids and your families during this time of COVID when you're all locked in a house and kids have come home from college, and how to have positive communications with your kids as opposed to just nagging at them. Why aren't your beds made? Why aren't your rooms picked up? Those types of things. So we've been looking at a virtual golf type of event as well. But really where we've gained the most traction over our time with COVID is the grieving dads piece. And we continue to grow our group on Sunday. That's been a pretty enriching experience.
Don, thanks for sharing. And that's the first time I've heard anything about a virtual golf event. I'm not sure how that works, but maybe we could follow up on that.
Yeah, I can share some stuff with you. So,
Matt, back to you.
Our group, kind of like what Donald said, is that the reason I started it was because I was very involved and I read a lot of books. When my son was born with a chromosomal abnormality, and all the books were talking about the mom, and it was always either written by a mother or talked about the mom. And I was always like, where the hell is the dad? I'm like, I'm here. Like, there's other dads around. So I knew there were dads that were involved and active. So that was kind of my inspiration of starting it. And when I started the group, I kind of thought myself, where would I want to go to go meet with other dads? And we kind of thought about going to like a church basement or something like that. There's nothing wrong with that, but we kind of thought of it as like a night out, and it's a way for dads to get out of the house. So we chose a pub. We have a private room at a pub, and unfortunately, that pub was fantastic. We had a great room, a nice fireplace in there. It was great, and they closed down. So we're kind of jumping from place to place now. But what we've seen though is that dads get kind of a hall pass to get out. The wives are kicking them out, or girlfriends are kicking them out of the house, saying, "Go out, go with the other dads, have a drink or don't have a drink or whatever, just go visit and hang out. And this is, again, about 10 years ago, and I'm still really looking for a name for the group. For lack of a better name, the group is called Dads of Special Needs Children, and that's what it's called on Facebook. It's a private group. When we first started, one of the dads jokingly said we should call it Dads on the Edge, because we're all so razzled and fried. So I don't think that would be an appropriate name for the group, but it is pretty funny. But we're open to everybody. It's real casual. We've made a lot of really good friends though. I've been really good friends, kind of like John has with his group. I met John and he lives an hour away, which out here is, could be, especially at rush hour, it's like, forever. It's like a whole other country. You become friends, and then you kind of get a core group of guys that come to the same meetings. And we haven't done anything as far as activities. We tried some different places, but no golf outings or any of that kind of stuff. I think just everyone's busy. I think that's kind of what the consensus was, is that we're lucky we can just get out for one night a month. So again, when we met every month, we would meet. We would take the summers off typically, and then when, like I said before, when COVID hit, we kind of put things on hold. We had a couple Zoom meetings, but that was that didn't really go far. Oh, and John just sent me a text. We went to we did a little excursion to, and it was really very cool. A video game place, this arcade that has a classic 80s arcade, which has every single arcade game you could think of when you were growing up in the 80s. And it was in this arcade. So John Felageller and I and Chris, one of the other dads, met there. It was more of like an informal Saturday morning, which was kind of tough for some dads to get to, but that was one kind of fun outing we did. But yeah, I think we're going to start doing Zooms. Things are starting to open up a little bit. And now with maybe with the weather getting warmer, we can maybe meet outside somewhere if we still want to social distance. So,
Matt, thanks for sharing. And just a little FYI, there's actually a group called the Good Dad Project, and they call their podcast the Dad Edge Podcast. So you might be infringing on their territory.
Yeah.
With that name that you were, I think, joking about, Dad's big on the edge. But Larry Hagner is the guy's name. I listen to his podcast with some regularity, and that doesn't have anything to do with special needs. But I think he does a good job and a lot of energy. So, like you guys, a lot of energy. So, Luis Mendoza, back to you.
Hello again. Just to repeat myself, I manage the Washington State Fathers Network. We are welcoming of any man who has a child in their life with special health care needs. And we don't define what that means for them. If the man thinks he has a child with special health care needs, then he's welcome. I mentioned we've been around since 1978. We have 12 chapters around the state of Washington. Not all of them are currently meeting. I think 6 of them are meeting. In terms of size, we have a mailing list of about 700 people. We have a Facebook following of about 3,700 people. We figure that pre-COVID, we probably, because we do, besides the meetings, we have social events. That we figure that we probably touch around 500 or 600 men every year who interact with us. The meetings that we have, they range in size from just a couple of dads, 2 or 3 dads, to a dozen or so. They meet in different places. Some will meet in a restaurant. Others will meet at a bar. Others will simply meet in a meeting room of some nonprofit. It depends on what works for that particular group of men. They all have a preference. Some men like meeting at the bar or the restaurant because it just seems more social. It's a thing that guys would do, just go to a bar and talk. But other men don't like that experience because they feel like if they happen to be talking about something that's very personal to them, and the waiter walks up to ask for an order, that it just kind of takes away from the moment. So you have to consider all those things and make sure the group the format of the group is working for that particular group of guys. There's different formats that are used. In some cases, we have one guy who always has an agenda. He has like a question he always asks. It's sort of the opening question. Most of the groups, though, it's just a bunch of guys getting together and shooting the breeze. Sometimes they ask for if all the guys are experiencing something similar, they may say, hey, why don't we bring in a speaker on this topic? And so that will happen. Sometimes the guys in the group all have the expertise and they say, why don't we talk about this particular topic from all of our experiences? So there's a number of ways that things can be handled. I'll leave it there for now. I know there are other questions and I'll get into other parts of what we do at that point.
Louis, thanks for sharing. Frederick, back to you.
Man to man, we have, like Louis said, our member group on Facebook, we have about 300 followers. Our average members is about 40. But as our meetings, we can go from 2 members show up to the meeting to 15 to 20. It depends on the topic. And the approach that we took was started the group what came off of an umbrella from another support group here, Blue Skies. I fell under their umbrella. He does something with the general family, and I wanted to do something kind of like Tom said, what about the fathers? So I started Man to Man, and the 2 of us got to talking, and I created Man to Man. And my experience being military and retired law enforcement, I took the peel of the onion approach. So I know it's hard to get to a man. So you have to go layer by layer by layer. So we went to talking to them, pulling them up, getting guest speakers, finding that topic, to getting inside them first before we went outside of the building. And we would meet monthly, the 3rd Saturday of the month. We would meet from 10 to 2, and we would pick a topic, and we get a guest speaker. And I tell you, when you reach out to the local professionals and tell them, hey, I got a group of dads, special need dads looking for this, and we need a professional, they were overwhelmed. So they would come, and we kind of build a network with them that they would also refer dads to us too. Like some of the psychologists would come and they say, hey, I got a new dad, new diagnosis, they need help. So we kind of start building from there too. And kind of a little like Matt said too, that we went to the point where wives started loving our group because it opened up the fathers. We got from topics, like we say, we go from birth to death that we talked about. We even had topics about how to get the magic back in the marriage. And we even we worked with some counselors and created a sibling questionnaire to give to the sibling of a special need sibling, to break the ice, to get them to talk about how they feel having a special needs sibling, questions that they might not want to talk about, the feelings they hide, the guilt they hide, and it opened up. Pre-COVID, we did a lot of things. We, like I said, we started inside. Then once we peeled the onion, we went to car shows together, showing the public what we could do. We went boat rides. We have a thing here in Galveston called Sailing Angels, where they take special need kids out, and we took the fathers out and went on that. We did date day with the mothers and took the kids out to kind of show the community what we look like and quit hiding our kids inside. Also, we, like I said, we kind of went out. Harvey came, we got together, because one thing about our group, we say, you'll find what you need in that group. If you like to talk trash, we got some trash talkers, we got some avid bike riders, sports fans, mechanics, so-called greatest cooks in the world who think they can outcook anybody. And when Harvey hit, we got together and went around repairing homes. especially single moms home. And like the rest of you guys, when COVID hit, we shut down. We kind of didn't know what to do. Everybody afraid, contracting. And I think it was John who said that once it comes back open, I think we can just blow the whistle and everybody will be happy to meet up again. So we're kind of in limbo now. We reach out and talk to each other, but really a few Zooms, but nothing major. And I'll back off there until another question comes up.
Thanks, Frederick. What I found interesting about your program, you took it beyond just the dads meeting with one another. You involved the kids with some of the called outings that you had organized, and you involved the spouses of the mother of the children as well. And I think that, obviously it takes a little bit more coordination and admin, but I think you're trying to make it a little bit more multifaceted. That's what I heard you say. And I just love the creativity, the ingenuity that you talked about. So with the next round, I'd like you to focus on best practice. What's worked the best? If you had to pick one, no more than two things, and to contrast that with the biggest challenge, right? I can anticipate the biggest challenge is just getting guys to commit and show up. But if you could try to peel back the onion, like Frederick was saying. So the question is, what's worked the best? What's been, the most, what you've gotten the most receptive for? And then if you had to identify one thing, so that those that are thinking about perhaps either joining a group or maybe even starting a group of their own that might be watching this YouTube video, give them some insights or a heads up. So starting back at the top, Tom Delaney, back to you.
I think when I think about the group, and you're right, getting guys to participate, getting guys to step forward, getting guys to be consistent contributors to the group is the biggest challenge. I think, and I've been tempted over the years to really like call out my list, and just guys that I haven't heard from in the longest time, just drop them from the list and stop inviting them. And I just always tell myself, well, that every time I think about it, I think, no, you can't do that, because you want to have that dad's meeting when the guy says, I got to go. He says to his wife, it's time for me to go get with some other guys and open up, and I have some things to say, or I need to get out of the house. And I think so, like, the thing for me is just to be patient with it, and don't drop anybody from your list. Just have an open group where folks can come and go when they need to be there, and it just needs to be open, and that's the purpose of the whole thing, is it has to be for them. It can't be about you, can't be about your ego, can't be about your frustrations with being the leader of the group. You kind of got to put all that on the shelf and realize you're doing this for a reason, and it's not it is for me because I get something out of it, but it's about helping the other guys. So I think it's persistency, it's patience, it's accepting have been the big keys for me anyway. And what was the second part? What was his second question?
It's been what the biggest challenge is, but I think you addressed it.
I think I guess point B of the challenge would be finding a good number two or a good number three, just having a little bit of leadership bench. Because there are going to be times when there's things going on with either my life personally, my life professionally. COVID's a great example where we're just really being conservative with Jack because he's had a lot of health issues, and so we're not getting out. Now there might be some guys who are willing to get out a little bit more than I am, and if somebody else wants to step forward and take that leadership position and pinch hit while I'm not involved, it would be nice to have a number two, a number three, some guys that would want to step forward and kind of pick up the torch when I can't do it. So.
Yeah, well, you raise a point, Tom, which is that the leader, the guy who's sending out the emails, organizing everything, there's a lot of weight on your shoulders. Not burden, like heavy weight, but if there was a shared responsibility where you could count on somebody helping out, co-chair, whatever you want to refer to it as, I think there's just a higher level of continuity, like you were suggesting. So thanks for sharing. John Feligler, back to you.
Sure, and I guess I want to echo a lot of what Tom said as well. You know, the point of doing it is that you have to have you have to go in with the expectation that you may get one guy, you may get 10 or 20, but even if you get one guy, it's worth doing because you never know what that monthly meeting or however much you do it means to that guy who maybe has no one else to talk to, has no one else to discuss these things, to share life in this context, right? Or even to have kind of like that hall pass, like we're saying, to say, okay, I don't just want you going out drinking with your buddies or going to the game or playing poker, but that thing, I'll send you out for that. You can go hang out with the guys for that. And that's wonderful, right? We don't necessarily even, as I've said it before, even necessarily have to talk about our kids. I think naturally we will, but if guys need to talk about other things that are going on with them, that's fine too. Biggest challenge, yes, getting guys together. And I think it was put best, David, when you interviewed Steve Gresovich from Key Ministry. And I remember that podcast where he said, getting special needs dads together is like herding cats. And it's very apropos. It is like herding cats because getting guys together to meet with especially strange guys and talk about this is what's going on in my life and I'm hurting and this is going on. That's tough. Getting guest speakers absolutely helps. And actually, the thing about guest speakers, and I'm going to kind of connect this with just kind of promoting the group. The word that always comes to my head when I think about promoting stuff like this is synergy, right? It's connecting groups with other groups. So, for example, I've got a Facebook group for the Special Needs Dads Meetup. It's got a small distribution list, not much as far as who subscribes there, but then I'm always posting the events when they come up in 4, 5, 6 different groups. And it's funny because you get people, for example, who see this and you'd be surprised how this gets around. I always tell the story about how there was the one meeting we had where I'd invited out a financial planner, and he was a guy who was pretty well known in the area here. Well, we were ready to start the meeting, and again, this is promoted as a special needs dads meetup, and all of a sudden down the stairs into this party room walks this woman, and she's going up and introducing herself to the speaker. So I naturally go up and introduce myself to her, and I say, how are you? Nice to meet you. I'm John. I'm the leader of the group or whatever. And she's like, leader of what group? And I'm like, well, special needs dads meetup. And she's like, really? She's like, I just saw the ad and thought it was her. But I'm like, well, of course you can stay. That's fine. So, you never know who's going to see stuff or pick up on things. And also too, in terms of relationships that, you either build new or may have had previously, like there's one woman and David, where Kim Honey, who runs a KGH clinic in Northbrook, where my son had attended years ago. She's always promoting our stuff, on her company's website, and on their Facebook page. Every time she sees it, she's like, yeah, of course I'll promote you. So you never know who will notice, or more importantly, who will show up, right? So I think the point is that you have to at least keep offering it. If you really have a heart for this, you do it because you just enjoy doing it. And the enjoyment comes in, am I just going to talk to Tony tonight and we're just going to talk about what's going on at the Hallmark store? Or are we going to have 5 or 10 dads and, maybe for once I just shut up and I let other people talk, or, somebody else is having a great conversation. Wonderful, but you've created a space for it is the main point. And so I think that's where, again, surrendering the ego and the expectations go. And again, why are you really doing it? It's just to have a space for dads to come together where they might not otherwise.
John, thanks for sharing. What came to mind when the woman showed up at one of your dad's meetings is that I hosted a birthday party for my wife and her girlfriends. And there were about 40 women that showed up. And one of the women showed up with her husband, not knowing it wasn't for couples. So turns out that he and I were the only dads there, or the only husbands there, I should say. So anyway, all good. And it's about being inclusive anyway. So Don, back to you.
Yeah, I agree with what both Tom and John had said. I think patience and persistence are something that definitely, will pay off, because we likewise had events where just a couple of guys, or we, had 50 guys show up for a basketball tournament. But one of the things that I think has worked really well for us is when wives hear what we're interested in, they really want to share that information with their husbands. And so that's really been something that we've been able to leverage to say, oh, I wear a t-shirt that says, family, faith, fitness, and has dads of steel. Oh, I love that shirt. Tell me more about it. I get stopped, in the grocery store if I have a shirt on like that. So the moms or the wives have been very, very helpful. also very helpful too with connecting grieving dads to us, because it's and that's also been the biggest challenge, is trying to get a dad to join kind of on his own. Dads hold their feelings very close, and losing a child is a very painful experience that a lot of dads will just kind of keep that to themselves. So in that instance, the wives have been very helpful in terms of introducing them. And what we find out is that once, the number of guys that said, I wish I would have known about this a long time ago. It's just like getting them to make that first step is really the biggest challenge that we have. But I can guarantee you that every person who has joined our group really wishes that they had heard about us, a long time ago. And they are, regular participants in our Sunday Zoom calls now. So.
Don, thanks for sharing. Love the ability to sort of promote yourself by wearing a t-shirt, because it's a conversation starter.
Yeah.
And anything that we can do to engage the moms, make them advocate for what's going on, because this all does benefit the moms directly or indirectly when dads are more present in their children's lives.
Yeah.
They're not carrying as much burden on themselves. And
Excuse me. Oh, sorry.
a thought that came to mind had to do with encouraging dads to invite a friend, right? Because what I've witnessed is that all dads who have a child with special needs, other dads who have children with special needs, and sometimes it's a little intimidating to go to these meetings, for the first time, or maybe even once you've been involved with a group, because you don't know who's going to show up, or if you haven't been there, it might be like Bible study. You don't feel comfortable because you haven't been as consistent. The perception is that other guys have, week to week, month to month, or whatever. So I don't know if any of you have had any success with encouraging the individuals that are participating, even if it's remotely, to urge them to include a friend, right? Because that common refrain, like you were saying, Don, which I hear every week, literally every week for the last 3 years, is I wish there was something like this, referring to the Special Fathers Network when I was a younger dad, right? That they would have benefited from it. So thanks for sharing again. So Lewis, back to you.
Okay, I'm gonna agree with what everybody's saying about no matter how many dads show up, you gotta just keep doing this. Tell a couple of quick stories that kind of emphasize how important that is, because the dads count on it. Before my time with the network, there was a dad who hadn't been to a meeting for several years, and he finally showed up. He showed up one day, and he said, the only reason I'm here is because my son has finally been toilet trained. And nobody knows how important that is to me except for you guys. And I may not be back again, but if I need you, I know you'll be there. I know you'll be there, which is really a powerful statement. And then last week, I was in one of our chapter meetings, and a dad showed up who hadn't been there for 5 years. And he came because he had recently, his best friend from the age of 6 had recently passed away. And he was just having a hard time emotionally adjusting to that. He wasn't sleeping, he was edgy, he just needed to talk to some guys. So he came to the meeting, and he probably talked for 40 minutes, just nonstop. Nobody had to say anything, he just talked. And it was just a relief for him. So it's truly powerful when a guy can have another man to talk to. So yeah, just keep having those meetings. In terms of best practices, what has been mentioned is great. I think one thing that we've found to work well is working through the moms. It's stereotypically mom who goes to the places where information is, doctor appointments, schools, therapy appointments. And she'll get the flyer, or she'll see something and know about something like a father's group, and working through them to get that information to dad can be successful. The very first dad that I met when I joined the Fathers Network, he told me the only reason he came to a meeting was because his wife locked him out of the house. And she said, you can't come back in until you go to the meeting. So he sat on his front porch and tried to figure out what he could do in the yard for a while, but then he finally gave in and he went to the meeting and he became a very active member. And he's still with us. So get those moms to work for you. One of the things that I find interesting, and I don't know if this is the right place to bring this up, but I don't have evidence to this, but I have anecdotal stories about it, that social media has had an impact on the number of men that are coming to us. Because when I talk to the men who have been with us for years and years and years and years, whose kids are now adults, they say that, you know, when they first got their diagnosis, they said, okay, I don't know what this is. I don't know what autism is. I don't know what Down syndrome is, but I know I got to do something to help my family. And I've heard about this group of guys. I'm going to go talk to them. I'm not looking for friendship. I don't want to hang out with them. If they have something to say that'll help my family and my child, I'll go there and I'll do that. They went, they found value in it. They continued on. Nowadays, a lot of young dads, when they get that diagnosis, they say the same thing. I don't know what this is, but I gotta find information about it so I can help my family. And they go to the internet, because that's where that group of dads goes to get information. And not only can they get information, but they can join an online support group, which is really comfortable for them because they can be anonymous. They don't have to appear vulnerable. They can ask questions. Nobody knows that they're asking the question. It's just different. So I just wanted to bring that up as something that I think at least I'm facing. I don't know if the rest of you are. But there you go.
Louis, thanks for sharing. I love that story that you told about the dad getting locked out of the house, and you know, he finally figures out, well, maybe I'll go to the meeting then, and she'll let me back in. Does she lock him out every week or every month? Is that why he keeps coming back?
No, he came back. I think that after the first meeting, he realized that it was a place to be. So not all men figure it out that quickly. Sometimes it takes a while.
I love it. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Frederick, back to you.
Best practice. I know when I put this group together, I didn't know how to break the ice. So what I did was I went to an AA counselor and I told him what I wanted to do. And I asked him how he started. He said, well, if you're gonna do it, you have to do like we do. You have to have a person that your audience can see themselves in, that when they tell a story, they see themselves in the story, and that person has to be willing to share themselves. And when I look at you guys here, that's all of you. That's all I've been hearing. And that was me. And the more you share your story, the easier it gets. That's peeling that onion. That's peeling that onion. We talk, and a person in there, you'll feel them. You'll feel them when you talk. You'll feel them when you tell that most intimate part of the denial you went through, or when I used to tell the story that how I stayed at work when my wife had an appointment, when I pretended like, oh, I can't get off now, you know, I got to stay late. I didn't want to get off, and they were shaking their head. I'd make excuses. Go ahead, I'll get the next appointment. I'll do this. And they saw themselves in there. Those are the icebreakers. Those are the things you have to do. You have to bring them in by showing I'm you. They're not gonna accept you if they don't think that you know who they are and you know what they're going through. And you're talking about I think it was Tom talking about leadership. Leadership is the loneliest spot on the team. Nobody's going to give you a break. Even if when you get a break, they won't give you a break. They'll still call you. I've had dads call me in the middle of the night crying. Don, you was talking about death. I had 3 in the last year call me when their wife died, when they told me, hey, now all of a sudden I half-heartedly listened, and now I got to take the role. I got to step up and do things I never did before. And I had nobody else to talk to. I've gotten up at 2 in the morning, shaking my head, trying to get the cobwebs out, to be there for them, to listen. I got out of bed and met them somewhere, and we sat in a park and talked. That's a part of it. That's how you may not get big numbers, but you'll get solid numbers. And those guys will always be there for you. So when we do cookouts and when we need people, those are the ones, because you were there for them, they'll be there for you. And it's rewarding. It's challenging, but it's rewarding. And sometimes I get tired, sometimes I get wore out, but I wouldn't give it up for nothing in the world. My mother used to have a saying. She used to say, you can give out, but don't give up. If you give out, you can just take a rest. But if you give up, you just quit, period. Sometimes I give out, but I never give up on them. And I tell them that. And I think that when I look at this Zoom meeting here, I see that in every one of you, in each one of your disabilities, and I see the connection and what you're doing. It's going to get better. It's going to get better for them, for the young dads, the old dads, the ones that's afraid, and the ones, like you said, that won't come back, that'll come to a meeting and may not come back again. They know who to come to. You might get mad at them and say, I ain't seen this guy in years, and all of a sudden an email pop up or his number pop up on your cell phone, but they need you then. They need you. And when you answer, it's rewarding and it makes it worth it. I guess that would be the high point of it. Some of the regrets is that the ones you can't reach, the ones that's just so hard to get to, because that denial wall is just too high, too hard. No matter what you do, they're not ready for you, and you can't force your way in there. That's probably the biggest regret. That's it to hit it.
Frederick, thank you. Very profound words. Love your heart. Love the commitment. Words of wisdom from your mom about it's okay to give out, but not give up. That's a memorable one. So we're going to have a lightning round. We're going to go 30 seconds each. Tom, Delaney, you're going to be first. The question or thought is, a lot of the dads that are going to be watching this YouTube video are going to be wondering, how do I get plugged into one of these groups? How do I find one of these groups? What advice would you give? 30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds. Wow. I think the point of in today's world, and particularly during COVID, social media is really where you're going to find your connections. And I think particularly in the Down syndrome community, if you're looking for, in Chicagoland, you've got GGs, you've got NADs, you've got Ups for Downs. You're kind of Google away from finding a group these days. So
good deal. Thanks for sharing. John Feligler, over to you.
Yeah, and I'll agree with Tom. And I think the one thing that I would also add too is that, Facebook has a million groups for a million things. All you have to do is plug in any particular disability or condition. You will find those groups. Some tend to be more general, but I know in the Chicago area, we have some that are just kind of geared towards special needs overall. But you put a question in, regardless of the nature of it, you'll get a million responses, So that really is still a great vehicle for that. And, obviously it's social media in general, because it all crisscrosses anyway. So, maybe you find something on Facebook that takes you to LinkedIn or Instagram or who knows. But yeah, I'd agree with that. And I would just add the Facebook groups for sure.
John, thank you. Don, back to you.
Yeah, I agree. Social media, word of mouth. One of the things we're trying to do is get different media coverage through different news outlets and those types of things. So if we can get a spot on a local TV about us doing something good in the community, we're trying to do that as well. So, but any of those types of social media outlets, I think, are best, and then just word of mouth.
Great, thanks for sharing. Lewis, back to you.
Yeah, just to add to what's been said, I would say talk to service providers if your child's getting services somewhere, and then just ask. I mean, there's a large percentage of people in the country who have a special healthcare need. Ask. It shouldn't take too long before you find somebody who's got a connection.
Thanks, Lewis. Frederick, you're going to have the last word.
Okay. Pretty much what everybody said. Social media, the school system, local agencies, just get your name out with them. I know we did. Our brochures, our name, we're on Facebook there. If you're in our area, man to man, reach out and we'll be there for you.
I just want to offer my heartfelt thanks to each of the dads who's made himself available for this call to share his experience. As you've heard, there's a lot of variety, right, in these meetup groups. Some of them have been around for a long time. Some of them have a bigger social media presence than others. Some of them had some great success with their in-person meetings, and including guest speakers, or including children, or including the spouses. So it's not one size fits all. And I think the best advice I can share is that you need to take a little risk, right? If you're a dad listening to this program and you're not connected to a group of dads, you're missing out, right? You really don't know what you're missing. And whether that's getting plugged into a local group or a group that doesn't have a geographic footprint, or consider joining the Special Father Work, this very large and growing group of dads, a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. So for additional information, you scroll under the video and look for the additional resources that we posted. You could also go to the 21stCenturyDads.org website, and we hope to have you back again soon. Thanks again.